All right. So I'm so excited to have you in this conversation, Leanna, because I was gonna, like I shared with you yesterday, I was gonna record this on my own. But then when you jumped in, I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be even a better conversation with you. Yeah,
Everything's better with you.
exactly.
Our
Yeah,
conversations are so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to let people in on them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start the conversation by naming that what inspired this episode or this live stream is a post that Jen Underwood made, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, talking about the contraction that the coaching industry is in right now,
Yeah.
and about the people that are here now that sort of made it through this contraction, or that are continuing to be in this contraction, are the people who have like the capacity and who are like integrated and who are like probably the people who have the emotional leadership skills,
Correct.
right?
Accurate.
Yeah.
Correct. Hmm.
And so it just brought up a lot of thoughts for me around uh, holding the complexity between, yes, we're in a contraction, right? It was like this necessary thing, right?
Hmm.
It had to contract, right? People had, like I said, people had nothing else to do but sit on their asses for the first year of the pandemic and like work on themselves and
Yeah.
focus on their growth. And everybody sort of rushed in. There was like a gold rush of the coaching industry, and people inflated costs without increasing substance. People got
Yeah.
burned, they had investment trauma. And as a result, people became more discerning
Hmm.
about, how they spend their money. And so that's part of the contraction.
Yep.
And like holding that at the same time as we hold the audacious self-belief that it's all working, and that it doesn't mean that coaching is dead,
No, no, not at all.
right?
No.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and what inspired you in this post.
Yeah. So I'm always looking to suss out what's really true, period.
Yeah.
In terms of, and this was a huge learning I had when I, witnessed my father pass away. It's like, let's just strip it all down, guys and gals. Because like, again, we're here for a short time, not a long time. I mean, yeah, okay, multiple lives, but like, what I'm saying is what really actually matters, what really counts. What are we really doing here? What's the end game? What's the end goal? What's the purpose? What's the motivation? And really stripping it down, not just in like a spiritual soul way, but just in a human 3D way. Like, what are we working toward? What are we doing? What are we standing for? What is the actual value in our work in the bigger picture?
Mhm.
And when you named that sort of investment trauma, like that's a real thing. That's a real thing in an industry that, just like any other industry, just like anything out there that's trying to pull you in, is that we can have different parts of us that are making those decisions. And when it comes from a place of not enoughness, or like, I'm a problem and I have to fix it, we're ripe for the picking, market wise,
Totally, yes.
ripe for the picking, which is, as I sit in where I am in my cycle, is really sad. It makes me sad. Maybe last week it would fire me up. Like, obviously
Yeah.
I'm fired up, but it makes me sad because I know the potentially really devastating outcomes of that is that
Yeah.
people lose money
Yeah.
and they struggle to feed their family. Like that is a reality.
Mhm.
And so that's something I pull out, as well as something to talk about, is like, what is leadership really? What does it really mean to be a leader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
To me, it's very simple, is that you, first of all, that you're a good person, that you're kind, that you care. not that you flip that, not that you're like that you flop over or you give away yourself in your caring, but that you think about what it's like for another person
Yeah.
and you relate to them.
It's like empathy.
Yeah, and that you're not just relatable because you're, showing your real side, but just you're relatable because you can relate to another human in a real meaningful way.
Yeah.
To me, that's leadership as well as embodying the truth or the values or the beliefs that you have, is that you're embodied in that.
So,
It's who you are.
so there's an intimacy piece about like being able to connect with the pain or the experience or the suffering of another person.
Yeah.
And then there's the integration piece where it's just like, yes, it's part of you. It's like, it's who you are.
Yeah, you don't have to work toward it because it's the isness of you.
Yes, exactly. It's the
It's
essence.
it's the I and the I am.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And it's like, when we think about coaches who are online now, who are selling
Mhm.
their services, it's like one thing that I really want to communicate is that we can acknowledge that coaching is in a winter phase or that it's in a contraction, but it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that, like I said earlier, that coaching is dead, right? But
Yeah.
how is it that we respond? How do we
Mhm.
respond to this change, right?
Yeah.
The change is real. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you need to go into a story of like, well, people aren't buying,
Yes.
right? It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you give up,
Nope.
right? That's okay. So what is needed here? How do
Mhm.
we respond? How, as coaches making a living from doing our soul's work, how do
Mhm.
we respond to this contraction?
Yeah. Are you asking me to
I'm
respond?
bringing it in. Yes, like this is where I want to go, and I'm inviting you to speak on that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Okay. The first thing is any response gets the opportunity to be very measured, very, very well thought, very cared about. So that it's coming from that the trueness of who you are, and the part that's really anchored into the real situation we're in. Which basically sounds like listening more than talking and really listening to what people are actually saying.
yeah.
So yeah, it's and holding multiple realities as the full picture and the full scope of what we're all experiencing.
Yes.
So yeah, if you want to, sure, you can unplug from the idea that like people are struggling financially. You can unplug and like take that out of your reality if you want to. But you're missing a huge you're missing a huge portion of what people are actually experiencing. Right. And so you can respond out of fear. I don't even want to use the word scarcity because I find that one is just so demeaning. It just has such a negative tone when it's just somebody's just got concerns.
Mhm.
I don't really feel like we're inherently scarce. I mean, I just don't think we are. So I think it's very easy to slip into a caretaking mode. And
Yes.
I think that's the piece that I'm often sitting with. Am I making this decision about how much to charge, for example, from a place of caretaking? Am I
Yeah.
making assumptions? This isn't even about the value of my work because I'm just at a place where like it doesn't matter what I charge, I get the value. I don't need to prove that in one way or the other. But I find that I can, as a response to the financial realities or the changes in the industry, that I can change my prices out of a caretaking place.
Right.
Right. So it's like, oh yeah, it is hard. It's not just a tough times, it's confusing times we're going through.
Mhm.
Contractions can be confusing because it's like what's on the other side of what's coming in this next wave. So
Right.
I find I can get into a caretaking mode, and I feel like that's something to, as a leader, to be mindful of.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? I just use caretaking as like it's a regular thing we say in our home, but I'm not sure if that makes sense to other people. So
Yeah, and there's like, I tend to use sort of language around attachment, like codependency, where we're like,
Yeah.
we're abandoning ourselves in service of wanting to make the experience lighter or more comfortable for the other person.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you not sustaining yourself by lowering your prices to a
Hmm.
point, right, where it's really not helping you because you are then not sustaining yourself. You're not showing up for yourself
Yeah.
fully or accurately. Like, well, my
Yeah.
expenses are this much, and I really need to make this much a month to cover that.
Yeah.
Right? There's
Yeah.
just also like realities about your own expenses and cash
Yeah.
flow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, how do we balance all of those needs, right?
Mhm.
There's the need of people. There's people who are buying, who
Absolutely.
can invest at whatever price, and there's people who are you know having to sort of like resource themselves and sort of gather the money to invest in
Yes.
themselves in
Yeah.
business.
The
We want to
gathering.
respect all of those experiences,
Hmm.
and we can respond to the spectrum of those experiences by having like tiered pricing, for example.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
my last launch, I had tiered pricing, had a community price, a standard price, and an ally price. And I had people come in at all different, different levels.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a way to respond, is to like, yeah, have a range of pricing points so
Mhm.
that everybody can be included.
Yeah, I love the way that you did that, by the way. That's something that I'm really working toward for myself. And that's a trust piece, right? For me to trust. But I love how when you have the tiered prices, you're very explicit about this is what I'm talking about when I say the community price. Here
Right.
are the financial realities that you think about, that you move through, that you budget for. If this is you, that this is you in this category or this place, and like so on and so forth. And
And
I
it
feel
just,
like that's very clear.
yeah, it describes the experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm also feeling like something that I want to name is that, I I had a podcast episode with Leah Ardent
Mm,
in
mhm,
at the beginning of December of last year, and she talked about the winter season of coaching.
mhm.
And she is somebody that I respect a lot, who
Yeah.
is sort of tuned into the collective consciousness and collective unconscious. And
Mhm.
she didn't talk about this explicitly in the episode, but I know that she is a lover of multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
Something that I really wanted to bring into this conversation, because it's like, okay, so I believe in responsiveness. When something shifts, we shift, right? We sort of
Mhm.
respond in a way that matches the situation. Okay,
Yeah.
so we are in a winter season of coaching. How do I respond? Well, I would respond by becoming like clever and
Mhm.
creating safety for myself by coming up with another stream of income.
Yeah.
That can look lots of different ways, and it can be lots of different things, but it doesn't mean that you're no longer doing your soul's work, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But doing your soul's work doesn't mean it's the only thing that you do.
Mhm.
Maybe your soul's work looks lots of different ways.
Yeah. Having flexibility in your mind and the way that you're willing to see it is going to save you so many energy leaks, so much self-abandonment, so much self-beat up, so much challenge and difficulty in making a decision, right? Because decisions are so hard until we make them.
Yeah.
And then a challenge when we second guess them because it's not working out the way we think it should or whatever, right? Totally different conversation. But there's something to be said about that flexibility. And I really feel like that needed flexibility, that willingness to see it differently and to act as such, does first come from that baseline of capacity. Like being flexible means that you have the capacity to hold that transition and that shift in identity. And yeah, it's wonderful to identify. I remember really like fully coming into the identification of the I am a healer or a mentor or a guide or a coach, like that was a really big piece for me.
Yeah.
And so, and it's also dangerous if that's the only me
Right.
as
Right.
a participant in this like collective shifting and the moving of the everyday we go through. Like that to me, that's sort of like limited if I'm only that.
Yeah. No, and I love that you use the word flexibility, because I like to use like nervous system flex, right? And it
Yeah.
is sort of responsiveness that, like, like when you do contact improv, for example, somebody moves and then you move with it, right?
Yes.
Like, like
Yes.
things are always shifting and moving, and you respond
Yeah.
based on what's happening. And so, like, yes, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that we stay sort of entrenched in this, like, well, this was the path I'm going on and I'm going to continue going on it.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue going on it, but I'm also going to like open up to maybe get a
Yeah.
little scrappy and creative about like how I can make it work for me.
Yes.
How can I sustain myself and still have the safety, like show up for myself in ways that feel safe, right? That
Mhm.
create safety in my system so that I can continue to be a coach and do the work that I do, and market and sell my stuff.
Yeah.
I also sustain myself and be creative in the
Yeah.
process, and
Yeah.
have that time freedom that I value so much, because most people who aren't coaching are people who are like, not 9 to 5ers.
Yeah, there's like a different way of thinking, right? And I love that you named the improv. It's so funny because I fell asleep with my YouTube on last night and I woke up to bloopers of improvs. But it's funny you mentioned, but and so I was in theater for many years, and improv, one of the ways that you make improv work is that there's like this rule of always say yes, right? It's not that you agree to everything, but the second you say no or you like close off, you've cut off the creative process, right? And improv is a great metaphor for life because let's be honest. Yeah, we've got some things we know, but we're just making this up as we go. There's no real handbook for parenting. There's no handbook for that. Like we're just bringing what we know forward, right?
Yeah.
And so that's all we're doing, and we're just making the best decisions. And the way that improv flourishes is when we say yes, when we're willing, when we're open. So it's a flex, but it's also a great way to be in life.
Yeah.
And mind the meaning that you make when you do change and shift an identity or open yourself up to another stream of income, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the piece there. I'm happy to.
I'm not gonna lie about that, because I had a lot of feelings,
Yeah.
when I decided to, when I felt really tired of launching and I just
Mhm.
wanted clients to come in easily. I
Yeah.
had such a hard time putting my profile back on Psychology Today, because it felt
Yeah.
like I was taking a step backwards. That's the story I was telling
Totally.
myself.
Yeah.
Is I'm taking a step back. Like I promised myself I was done with this, and now I'm going back and putting it up again. I felt like a dirty hoe, It's like
Yes.
feelings coming up like ugh. And but it was one of the best things I did for myself, because I didn't have to launch, because it just wasn't part of my repertoire. Like I did not
Yeah.
have the capacity to hold the launch. I did have no desire and no joy around launching at that
Yeah.
moment. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I'm just going to lean back and let the clients come to me for once. What a fucking blessing that was.
What a blessing, right? And like how amazing it was that you were able to just sort of, because I think it's wonderful to hold a focus for your dreams and for what it is you're creating. And I also think it's us, like anything, a spectrum where it can sort of go into this danger zone of stubborn, sabotagey.
Yeah.
It has to be like this very like limited thinking, sort of front facing as I'm not giving up and I'm holding the dream. And it's like, awesome. Like part of my not giving up was giving up, like was
Yes.
putting down this like shield that I'm going through every day and like stopping to force something. And for me, it was launching group programs because it was just embedded in my head that like, oh yeah, it's January. I launched like da da da. But like it just was not like I was done. I was done. It's like first year of COVID was sort of this just kind of landing into it. And then the second year was like freeze response, like, right. And
Mhm.
it was so hard on I was so hard on my nervous system. And it made sense for me to find a way to make it easier
Yes,
without
exactly.
giving up. Like I never once had this story of like, I'm giving up on my business, like I'm not a coach anymore, like blah, blah, blah. Like actually the biggest learning I had was I'm a coach even when I have no clients. Cause for the first time ever, I had like a period of time. It wasn't a long time, but in your mind, it's a long time where I had no clients.
Yeah.
Like for a couple months in the summer, I think of 21, I had no clients. Like to me, that was like, wow, what is this even? And you have to like, that was like the deepest learning. If you don't identify as the truth of who you are without external, you know, provable evidence, like you got to get on board with that. You got to see yourself as that before. So, um, but here's the thing. I'll tell this really quick. I had a friend of mine whose son needed some help reading, and especially during COVID, children had lost that very essential time frame, typically between like 5 and 7, where a lot of the language skills come together and are able to be kind of like figured out and put together like a puzzle. And a lot of children lost that. They lost that critical time, on top of which you already would have children who would struggle with reading,
Yes.
because reading has a very structured way that it can be taught, as well as like meeting the reader where they are and all of these things, and like building up the confidence to be a good reader. Like there's a lot of moving parts that COVID wasn't able to provide. And children who struggle with reading, the saddest thing is that they often will struggle with everything else
Mm.
in some form. And what do children do is that they can't help but identify as that and see themselves that way and bring that forward. And the gap only gets bigger if you don't get it handled early. It's not a phase. They're not going to grow out of it. They need support immediately. And I know this as a qualified trained teacher for years. I know this. And I remember reading with this child, and that moment where it just clicks, like I'm obviously very like hormonal because I got my period, but I'm like, this is so beautiful. Like there is this click moment, and being a witness to that, it was like I remembered why I loved working with children and why I love teaching.
Yes.
And it's that same feeling I get with clients now when something just shifts.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I'm like, why would I not want to do more of this and get
Right.
paid for it?
Right.
So I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. It's the same thing with like with working in finance. It's like
Mhm.
the go like if you'd asked me 10 years ago, no, 20 years ago, what would be the most boring job I could ever do? It would be
Yeah.
like selling insurance. And the truth is now, like, I find it all kind of exciting. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's kind of magic with numbers. And I was somebody who, like, as a dyslexic child, like I wrote my tens as 0 1s and my
Yeah.
fives were backwards. And it's like, I've always struggled with numbers.
Mhm.
And I'm enjoying this so much because I feel like it's an edge for me. So I have
Yeah.
the satisfaction of growing
Yeah.
in this field, in the field of finance. And I've also been on calls with people where, like, I've always known about the connection between, not always, but like in the last 15 years, I've known about the connection between intimacy and money and love, right? Attachment. I've been
Mhm.
doing that work within myself.
Yeah.
And like that is something that I bring to the table
Yeah.
for people who are looking to have a deeper relationship with money, to build wealth and to build generational wealth. Like that is empowering people. So it's like I get to empower people wherever the fuck I go and whatever
Yes,
I do.
that's it. It's you doing all of it. Why are we so focused on what it looks like? Like
Exactly.
it does, like, it's the same you in your own curated way of being in the world and helping support other humans be humans here in a world that is very confusing.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
there's no difference. In many ways, there's no difference between how and what I teach when I'm doing the reading with the young ones versus in a session with a client.
Yes.
If I
Yeah,
really get honest, there's not a lot of difference. I'm
exactly.
showing them, here are the moving parts. Here's the map you're working with. Let's learn the map and then let's practice it.
Yeah,
Let's practice moving through the map in whatever context, whether you're reading or you're getting a handle on the voices in your head.
yeah.
Same. It's the same.
And like another piece that I want to really drill home is that, people who are millionaires and billionaires
Mhm.
are what they are or have the money that they have because they have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
Like, let's be smart about this. Like,
Yeah.
let us build different ways for money to love on us. Let us
Mhm.
build different ways, different pathways to working with us. That
Yeah.
just is smart to me overall. It doesn't even have to sort of be specific to responding to a contraction or responding to a so-called recession, right? Whether you want to
Mhm.
believe that or not. That is just smart. And thinking
Mhm.
about it from a polyamory perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
ways to love me, more
Mhm.
ways to love, and more ways to love me.
Absolutely. And it's yeah, it's a smart thing to do. That's the piece. It's a smart thing to do.
Like, why not have, a lot of people have, they have an extra property that they rent out as an
Yeah.
Airbnb. They
Yeah.
have, maybe they invest in this and maybe they do that. That is just a good idea overall, like just
Yeah.
financially speaking. And so when
Yeah.
I think about this in the context of coaching, you want to have multiple streams of income, regardless of whether we're in a boom or a recession, or whether
Yeah.
in an expansion or a contraction.
Yeah. It's just a good idea all around.
It's just a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah. And you know what? It's been interesting because I've been thinking of I've had this urge in the last, I guess, 2 months where I've been like monitoring it and watching it and being with it. But it's this urge to just really come out and just share more about, hey guys, like here's the deal with reading with young kids. Like
Mm,
most parents love their children, but not most, all parents, like, I don't know, that's not what I meant to say. All parents love their children. Most parents struggle when it comes to teaching their children. It's too close to home.
yeah.
Most of us haven't done like the intergenerational parenting healing work, like the work specific to being a parent. And that's okay. That's, most of us haven't done that. We learn as we go and then we're like, oh my gosh. But even I struggle to work with my own kids without some kind of a headbutt thingy. So like I just want to normalize that. But there's parts of me that are like, just get online and just talk about this. Like make a little Facebook group or make a Facebook page. Like just come out of the closet and just tell people this is what you do. And so this is me telling you this is what I do. Um, but I just feel like when there's an urge, just follow it, as well as don't overcomplicate the idea that, I'd be curious what would hold people back from multiple streams, because I often wonder if it's like people don't think that the desires they have could be monetized, or that it could be that easy, or it feels like, oh, that's like a whole other piece of work. I mean, that would be something I would think about.
Yeah. Or like, there's a story around selling out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Shame that comes up around, like, it's a failure. I failed. I couldn't make it work.
Mhm, mhm.
People don't want to feel that, but it's like
Yeah.
that. It doesn't need to mean any of those things. It means
No.
that you get to buy groceries and you get to go on vacation and you
Yeah.
get to, like I said earlier, your soul's work in lots of different ways.
Yeah. And you get to also know that this bill is paid and this bill is paid and this bill is paid, as well as like ideally doing it and loving it. Like I I I love doing it. I love working with kids and reading. It's just so rewarding. And it to me, it's so front line. It's on the front lines of like real actual needs people have. Not
Yeah.
that, that diminishes anything else I do or any other need out there, but it's a real piece that's really needed,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's something very unique and different about the way I do it,
Right.
you know.
You're not replicable.
No, and here's the thing is like I just started doing it because it was something to take my mind off swimming in my own business around like what am I doing? What do I do with not feeling motivated to do group programs? Like what does that mean? And like, oh, I'm like, hey, how about Leanna, just do this. You're really good at it. And it just it's an well-oiled machine. I don't market it. I just keep getting recommendations and keep getting hired. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I'm loving
fabulous.
it.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And I want to shift into right, like if you are still here as a coach,
Hmm.
you are still marketing and selling your work, right? You're still sharing your work and inviting people into your work, as I like to call it.
Hmm.
What is needed then? What do we need to do more of in order to, I don't know, have better outcomes or increase our numbers, if you're going to talk about it in this
Hmm.
way? But yeah, what's needed? How do we respond to that?
I know one thing that I get curious about if people let me just hold on. Rewind, reset. Boop. I've got something to say to that. Um, I would love to see, um, especially new coaches making a connection between my professional knowledge and training in this area and how I'm able to really add value to what I'm doing and make that clear in my work. Like I feel like that is a place to really lean into. Like, what are you doing with people? What is and this is the piece, is like, what is your process? What's the process that you're bringing people through? And I know that there's so much resistance around this,
Yes.
because everybody's so different and I can't do the same thing with everybody. And like, I just download from spirit. And like, that's cool, man. All good. If that's working for you, fabulous. You're obviously very good at it. And it's very good that, whatever. But I think many times it's much better if you know what you're doing and you can translate that. So that's what always will come through for me is like, well, what are you doing with people?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
get comfortable talking about that.
Yeah.
Really comfortable.
Right. So what you're talking about is messaging and communicating your value
Mhm.
to potential clients,
Yeah.
being very clear about the process you take people through in
Yeah.
order to provide the outcomes that you are,
Correct.
that you can deliver the outcomes, or that you can actually deliver the services that result in the outcomes.
Yeah, that you know what the deliverables can be, like, and that you can articulate how your work can help that. So yeah, that's a messaging piece, but I feel like there's this pre-knowledge of it's like making sure the soil that you have is actually going to nurture the seeds you plant, because not all soil's the same.
Yeah.
So by way of metaphor, it's like your work, you need to know what it is you're doing, whether that's you take a course to increase your skills or whatever it is, but you need to know what you're doing
Mhm.
and be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like that there's enough conversation about that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that is really, really important, especially when people are more discerning about where
Mhm.
and with whom they invest their dollars,
Yes.
and who they entrust with, mentorship.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, to communicate, like, this is the process, this is what I do, this is how I guide you
Yeah.
into these next phases, this is what you can expect at the end of working with me,
Mhm.
right? And that clarity, that messaging communicates safety and trust. Like,
I believe so.
people feel at ease when it's like, oh, here's the map. Oh, okay. So you know the map. And even if we don't like hit all the points perfectly, I know where we're going. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, where are you going?
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Yeah. And how are we going to get there?
How are we gonna get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's many different buyers. There's many different ways people are buying. Some people need all that information. Some people don't. Some people are like, I vibe with you and I resonate with you and I trust that. And that's totally fine. But that's, in my experience, it's interesting because it's the way a lot of people come to me. They're like, I don't even know why I'm here, but I'm supposed to be here. I'm like, cool, on point. And then there's other people who need all that information, who need this specifics, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I get as feedback when I share, how the work works and what we're going to do together and like their particular situation and how it's going to flow in the work, they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, there's parts of us, there's even parts of us, like there's a part of me that is like, I like you. I don't need to know how you do it. I just know you're going to take me there. And
Yeah.
there's another part of me that's like, ooh, give me all the information. Like, I like to know where we're going.
Yeah. I want to see the modules.
Yeah. I want to see the modules,
Give me the
so it's like,
modules. Yeah.
there's
Hmm.
different parts that, like that come in as part of making the decision of, how,
Yeah.
who am I going to work with, or where am I going to invest my money?
Yeah. I feel like that may be, a place where buyers are shifting, where that in the past, there was almost like a diminishing of the value of a training or a master's degree or a PhD or like some type of, paradigmed learning, like, okay, I'm in the box and here I am learning and going through all the things. There was like almost a near throwing the baby out with the bathwater of like the coaching industry is, it's just like, you got to have a different way of being. And like, that's the old way. Like, who cares about certifications? But I think people do care. I think
Yeah.
they care. They know what you're doing and that you're well educated in that. And it doesn't have to be a privileged, like high class thing that it, used to be. It can just be somebody took the time to master something.
Yeah, and I know plenty of people who don't have, let's say, master's degrees or PhDs, who clearly communicate or clearly like give off the presence that they have mastered skills,
Yeah.
right? In what they share, in how they show up. So it's like, I know I don't care about degrees. And maybe it's
Yeah.
because I have one that I know, like there's plenty of people who have degrees who are like not useful
Absolutely.
or harmful.
100%.
And,
Yeah.
so I really respect the people who don't
Yeah.
have degrees and who really like life has been their school,
Yes.
and that they really made the most out of that education.
Yes. And so here's the thing. It's like, tell me you know what your work is, or you know what you're doing without telling me you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right. And so
Exactly.
all I'm saying is that there is still value in doing the traditional certification and coursework. And like, that's all super valuable.
Yeah.
All super valuable.
This is great. This is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, and I think there's the transparency piece. Like I always talk about, like, be transparent, be real, be truthful, say the
Yeah.
thing, right? You and I
Yeah.
have talked about that before, and that is
Yeah.
part of it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what I know, and just sharing what you know in lots of different ways, in multiple
Mhm.
multiple types of posts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that communicates what you know, and that is part of the transparency that builds trust with your audience, that communicates safety. Like, yes, you can come to me. I'm going to be able to hold your whole human experience, right?
Mhm.
Be seen and heard. That I feel like that's all really, really important part of continuing to be in the coaching industry while it is in a contraction, to not be doing the fluff and rainbows and, like, I don't know, rainbow farts or whatever it is,
Yeah.
messaging, but really, like, let's nail this shit to the ground. Like, let's be very concrete and grounded and truthful and honest
Yeah.
about what we're doing with clients.
Yeah, what we are doing, which is like, I put this post out, I put it out a couple of times. I'll probably put it out again. I do have a part of me that wants me to talk about the work differently. It wants me to just, lean into all the things that are possible and all the wonderful versions of you can be when you're done the work. But like, I just feel like and that's great, but I just feel like we also get to talk about what's really happening
Mhm,
and
mhm.
unpack all of these repressed and unmet needs and unexpressed emotions without just like skipping over them and going to all the good stuff,
Yes.
like, yeah, there's great stuff that can happen when you do the work.
Yeah,
But
and you
let's
still
talk about what's actually happening right now.
and even when all of that is possible, and even when you do attain those things, right?
Yeah,
When you reach that place, you're still a fucking human being,
you're
and
still a human being.
shitty ass days, and you still have, like, all of these emotions coming up,
Yep.
right? That need to be processed. There's still, like, ancestral, like,
Yep.
trauma that is getting, like, metabolized, and that's still part of the game.
It's still part of the game. It's not done. That's still we're it's a long game. Shadow work, healing, being human, loving all parts of yourself, wholeness,
Yeah.
you know, quantum leaps, manifesting, whatever spiritual jargon is out there. It's just, can you be with yourself? Do you have a way to handle yourself?
Yeah.
Period. And like, that's it. Do you have a way to handle yourself?
Yeah.
It's that simple,
I love it. I love it. Thank
you
you so
know?
much, Leanna. This was fabulous.
Yeah, it was a really great way to start my morning. Like, seriously, so good. And I feel like, speaking of parts, I feel like there's a part that's like, oh, girl, your mind is like, woo. So
I
hopefully it
like it.
makes sense.
I like sort of like navigating that whole terrain with you.
It's like literally super fresh. My cycle's like, oh, you're about to go away for 4 days. There's a hot tub there. Just a second. And now,
Now.
oh, you're getting on with Isha. You're going to do some really interesting chats. And now, brain fog, bleeding, confusion. Yeah. So, in all of it, right? In all of it, we're good.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much
Yeah.
again.
Yes.
Be well.
Yes. You too, my love.
Okay.
I'm gonna hang up when we're done. Yeah. Is it?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I love
Bye.
you.
Love you too.
Okay. Bye.